All right, verdict form appears to be in order. We'll let the clerk publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 20th Judicial Circuit in Forley County, Florida, criminal action. State of Florida versus Wade Wilson, case number 19 CF 568. Jury verdict form, penalty phase. We, the jury, finds as follows as to the defendant, Wade Wilson, in this case. As to count 1, first-degree murder, Christine Milton. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt that Wade Wilson was previously convicted of a felony and under sentence of imprisonment or placed on community control or on felony probation. Yes. We, the jury, find unanimously that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt that Wade Wilson was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use of threat of violence to the person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt that the first-degree murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt that the first-degree murder was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. No. If you, the jury, answered no to every aggravating factor listed, you have completed your deliberations. If you, the jury, answered yes to any aggravating factor listed, proceed to Section B. If fewer than 8 jurors vote for the death penalty, your recommendation must be for a penalty of life in prison without the possibility of parole. If 8 or more jurors vote for the death penalty, your recommendation must be for the death penalty. We, the jury, unanimously found the state proved 1 or more aggravating factors. Each of us has considered whether 1 or more mitigating circumstances exist. Each of us has weighed whether the proven aggravating factors are sufficient and whether the proven aggravating factors outweigh any proven mitigating circumstances. We have further considered whether Wade Wilson should be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole or death. We, the jury, find by a vote of 9-3 that Wade Wilson should be sentenced to death. As to count 4, first-degree murder, Diana Ruiz. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of aggravating factors. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt that Wade Wilson was previously convicted of a felony and under sentence of imprisonment or placed on community control or on felony probation. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt that Wade Wilson was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use of threat of violence to the person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt that the first-degree murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt that the first-degree murder was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. If fewer than 8 jurors vote for the death penalty, your recommendation must be for a penalty of life in prison without the possibility of parole. If 8 or more jurors vote for the death penalty, your recommendation must be for the death penalty. We, the jury, unanimously found the state proved one or more aggravating factors. Each of us has considered whether one or more mitigating circumstances exist. Each of us has weighed whether the proven aggravating factors are sufficient and whether the proven aggravating factors outweigh any proven mitigating circumstances. We have further considered whether Wade Wilson should be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole or death. We, the jury, find by a vote of 10-2 that Wade Wilson should be sentenced to death. Dated this 25th day of June, 2024, in Lee County, Florida, 4-person, 234.
Does anybody want the jurors to be polled?
Yes, please.
Okay. Members of the jury, we're going to ask each of you about the jury's decisions that you have just heard. And I'm going to go juror by number. So do you, juror 97, agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided? Juror 97. Okay. Do you agree that the decisions read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes.
Juror 234. Do you agree that decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 3. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided? Juror 205. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes.
Juror 101. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes.
Juror 215. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror 87. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes.
Juror 362. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes, sir.
Juror 136. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes, sir.
Juror 193. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes, sir.
Juror 315. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes.
Juror 309. Do you agree that the decisions as read by the clerk accurately reflect what the jury decided?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We've recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, from the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. With that, we thank you again for your service. Gather your belongings, make sure you don't leave anything in the jury room, and the bailiff will escort you out. You are discharged.
All right.
All right. Please be seated. All right. What says the state in regards to sentencing? I know we have to have a Spencer hearing.
Yes,
And
we do need to go ahead and set it up for a Spencer hearing. We also need to have a pre-sentence investigation
Okay.
on the defendant.
All right.
So we're thinking 45 days out?
Are the parties available on July 22nd?
July 22nd?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay.
I'll be
How
flying
about-
back from
oh,
Wisconsin.
Okay. How about July 29th?
I'm supposed to start a second-degree murder trial in Arcadia on the 29th. I can't be ready that fast.
How about on July 23rd?
That'll work.
That works for the state.
What time, Judge?
9 a.m. So I'll order a pre-sentence investigation report and have the Department of Corrections prepare that. And then we'll set sentencing and Spencer hearing.
I want the Spencer hearing at 9 and the sentencing at 1.
That's fine. We can do that. Start in the morning and then recess until the afternoon. So I'll give you all day on Tuesday, July 23rd, beginning at 9 a.m. Mr. Wilson, I believe he's already been fingerprinted, but it may need to get fingerprinted again and remanded, or does he need to get fingerprinted? Okay. Then he'll just be remanded. He'll be held without bond until July 23rd, until sentencing and Spencer hearing on July 23rd, beginning at 9 a.m. Any other issues that the court needs to address?
No, it's not, Judge. Thank you.
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Then we'll be adjourned. All right, sir, if you'll just face the clerk, raise your right hand. She'll swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can take the stand. You may proceed.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
Stephen Testa.
Mr. Testa, where are you employed?
I'm self-employed.
What type of work do you do?
Window and door replacement.
Are you married?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your wife's name?
Melanie.
Do you live in Fort Myers?
No, ma'am.
What city do you live in?
Lakeland.
About how far is Lakeland from Fort Myers?
2 hours.
How old are you, sir?
46.
You know someone by the name of Wade Wilson.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know Wade Wilson?
He's my son.
How old were you when you found out you were going to be his father?
14 or 15.
How old was his mother at the time?
A year younger than me.
Now, were either of you in a position at that age to be able to raise him?
No, ma'am.
Was he placed up for adoption?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was he adopted by?
Candy and Steve Wilson.
And did they have any connection to you or Wade Wilson's mother?
You mean?
Like, how did they?
Oh,
How were they known?
they went to church with Wade's mother's parents.
So that was how they connected and ended up raising Wade Wilson.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, do they have any other children?
Yes, ma'am. 2 daughters.
And have you spoken with them on numerous occasions?
I've spoken with Candy.
And that's his adoptive mom?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at some point, did you and Wade Wilson connect?
Yes, ma'am.
How old was Wade Wilson when he connected with you?
18.
And was he wanting to connect with you because you're his biological father?
Yes.
And up until that point, had you ever met him?
No, ma'am.
Did you end up attempting to have a relationship with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he seem to want to have a relationship?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you have phone calls often?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have occasions where you would see each other?
No. I went up and visited him one time in Tallahassee.
Okay. Now, did he often ask you for money?
Yes, ma'am.
Did your relationship turn into a situation where he was just asking for your help?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to turn your attention to Monday, October 7th of 2019. Did Wade Wilson get in touch with you through phone call that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was it that he told you when he called?
The first time he said he needed help. He had done something that he couldn't take back.
Did he indicate that he and his girl had gotten into an argument?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was his girl that you were aware of at the time?
I just knew her as Mila.
And did it seem that he wanted your help because of this argument?
Yes, ma'am.
When he called you, were you actually at work?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able to really give your attention and time to him to try to help him at that point?
No, ma'am.
So what did you tell him when he was asking for your help?
I just told him to call me back around dinner time. I'd be done working and we'd figure it out.
And did you at some point have a conversation with your wife about him getting in touch with you wanting your help?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, during the time that he was supposed to call, about what time was he supposed to call back?
I told him around dinner time.
Now, between the time he first called that day and dinner time, did you receive a call from a detective?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that detective looking for your son?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when the detective was looking for your son, did you have any idea at that point of what had happened?
No, ma'am.
Did the detective want you to try to help them get in touch with your son?
She just gave me a number and said if he calls you back, we need to talk to him.
Okay. Now, did he end up calling you later that evening?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did he tell you in that call that evening?
The final call?
Nope, the call before the final call.
He just told me, he did something. There was 2 people gone that would not be back. He said, I'm a killer. I just told him to call me back. I just thought it was another story,
So at this point, when he says that there were 2 people that wouldn't be with us and that he was a killer, did you put a lot of weight into that?
No, ma'am.
Did you think he was just telling you a story?
He's a good storyteller.
So did he then call you back a third time?
Yes, ma'am.
What time did he call you back?
It was around 10 o'clock.
I want to go back to that dinner time call. When he talked about these 2 people who were no longer with us and that he was a killer, did he show any type of remorse?
No, ma'am.
So let's go now to the 10 o'clock call. Again, your wife knew about kind of what was going on during that day.
Yes, ma'am.
And when he called back at 10, did he go into more details about what he had told you earlier?
Yes, ma'am.
So let's start with the first girl. If you could tell the jurors, what did he tell you?
He just said he met a girl at a bar. They went back to her house, hung out for a little bit, and then she fell asleep.
What did he say happened after she fell asleep?
He said he got on top of her and choked her.
What name did he call her? Did he refer to her in a derogatory term?
He said, I choked that bitch.
Okay. And what did he say he did after he choked her?
He said he stayed in the house for a little while, and then he rolled her up and was going to try to put her in her trunk, but he couldn't lift her.
Did he say why he was unable to put her in her trunk?
He said that he felt like rigor mortis had started to set in.
And does rigor mortis make your body stiff? You didn't know?
I think so.
So he just told you that that was the reason that he couldn't lift her and get her into her trunk?
Yes, ma'am.
And when he said her trunk, it was the trunk of her car he was going to put her in?
Yes, ma'am.
So what did he tell you he did when he couldn't get her body into her own trunk?
He left her there and took her car.
What did he say about the second girl?
He said he saw her walking down the street and stopped and asked her for directions. And she got in the car with him.
What did he say happened once she got in the car with him?
He said he reached over and choked her.
And did he tell you that he choked her while he was driving?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what did he say happened after he choked her?
He said he was looking for a place to put her body.
Did he find a place where he eventually dumped her body?
Yes, ma'am.
What did he tell you about the situation when he got to the place where he was going to dump her body?
He said that he pulled her out of the car and realized that she was still breathing.
So what did he tell you he did when he realized she's still breathing?
He said he got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti.
As he's telling you all these things, what's his demeanor as he's telling you?
He was excited.
When you say excited, what do you mean by that?
I felt like he was wanting me to feel the way he felt about it.
Did he seem proud of it?
Yes.
Did he seem to show any kind of remorse?
No, ma'am.
And was he able to go into great detail about both of these ladies' deaths?
Yes, ma'am.
The second girl that he killed and left in this lot, did he think that she would be found?
No, ma'am.
He seemed to think he did a good job hiding her body.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the whole time that he's telling you these details, is your wife hearing any of these details?
I had the phone on speakerphone.
Now, prior to him telling you these details, how did you feel about turning him in to law enforcement?
I initially wanted to help him.
Did you feel conflicted about giving him over to law enforcement
Yes,
initially?
ma'am.
At some point when you're talking with him, did that feeling change?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
I just thought, what if that was my mom or my daughter or sister or wife? I wouldn't want somebody to do that.
And did you have additional concerns of what might happen if you didn't turn him into law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that, sir?
He would have done it again.
Now, after he's telling you all these details, do you know where he's at when he's telling you these things?
I just knew he was in a house that he broke into when he was running from the police.
Did you know the actual address of this house he broke into?
No, ma'am.
Now, when you were talking to him and you decided that you needed to give the information to law enforcement about his whereabouts, how did you get that address from him?
I told him I was going to send him an Uber, and I needed the address of where he was.
Were you actually going to send him an Uber?
No, ma'am.
And so when you told him that you were going to send him an Uber, did he give you that address?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you then do with the address he gave you?
My wife was messaging with the officer.
Now, is your wife messaging with the officer during the course of these details that he's telling you?
The last part of them.
And so she's relaying what your son's telling you to law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
Giving them further details?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, again, this conversation you're having with your son is on October 7th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
It's in the evening hours?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it your understanding that him going to the bar and meeting the first woman happened the night before?
Yes, ma'am.
So at this point, when he's giving you all this information and you're giving this information to law enforcement, had the second girl's body been found?
No, ma'am.
And did it strike that? Now, that address you said your wife then gave to law enforcement.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you remain on the phone with your son?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you on the phone with him when law enforcement showed up at that house?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you encourage him to go outside and turn himself in?
I did. I didn't want him to do anything stupid and end up getting killed. So I just told him to put his hands up and just go outside.
I have nothing further and tender this witness. Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I do have one more.
Okay.
Do you see your son sitting here in the courtroom?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you describe an article of clothing he's wearing?
Dark suit.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that the witness is identified. Actually, if you could just give it a little bit more description since there's other people.
White shirt, blue tie, dark suit.
All right, Your Honor, at this time, I'll let the record reflect that the witness is identified.
Okay. Any questions?
Just briefly, sir. When you were on the phone,
Yes, sir.
he told you he was hiding out from the police in that house.
Yes, sir.
How often had you spoken with him before?
It was sporadic. One month it may be every other day, and I may not hear from him till he needs me again. 6 months, 2 months, whatever. It varied.
All right. Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing further. I'd ask that he be excused from his subpoena.
Any objection?
The jurors, your name.
Stephanie Sailors,
What was your name back in 2019?
Stephanie Johnson.
Have you since gotten married?
Yes.
How old are you?
I'm 41.
Do you know someone by the name of Christine Melton?
Yes, Christine and I have been friends since we were in high school.
Where did the two of you meet?
In Illinois, where we grew up.
When did you meet?
When we were about 15 years old, and we became friends through her cousins, who I'm also very close with, and we were inseparable, moved across the country together, lived together all through our 20s, and then ended up moving to Florida to be close to all of our family down here.
Where else did you live across the country with Christine?
We lived in Colorado together as well.
And did you both end up here in Cape Coral, Florida?
Yes.
Back in October of 2019, were you working?
Yes, Christine and I both worked at Duffy's in Cape Coral.
What type of employer is Duffy's?
It was a restaurant and bar, and we both waited tables there.
Was Christine dating anyone back in October of 2019?
No, Christine was not dating anybody.
Were you dating anyone?
No, I was not.
Where did Christine live at the time?
Christine lived in Cape Coral off of Tudor Drive.
What type of home did she live in?
It was a duplex apartment.
Did she live with anyone?
She lived alone.
Did she have any pets?
She did have one cat.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing defense counsel what's been previously marked as State's Exhibits 4 and 10A. I'm going to show you these photos and ask if you'll take a look and tell me if you recognize them. Starting with State's Exhibit 4, what do you recognize this exhibit to be?
That's Christine?
Okay, is that how she looked back on October 6th and 7th of 2019?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 10A. Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, that is the apartment that Christine lived in.
And does that fairly and accurately show the apartment that she lived in back in October of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, the state would move 4 and 10A into evidence.
Any objection? Be admitted.
Permission to publish.
You may.
that Christine?
Yes.
I'm showing you her duplex where she lived at the time. Which door is hers?
The white door on the left. So there's a window and then the door right next to it, to the right.
Okay, so the door to the right of the window is her door, or the door to the left of the window?
To the left of the window.
Of the middle window?
Yeah, the far left
All
door.
right, thank you. I want to take you back to October 6th of 2019. Did you see Christine on that day?
Yes, Christine and I had planned to meet up later that night and to go out drinking at the Buddha bar in Fort Myers.
Had you ever been to the Buddha bar?
I had not been there before.
Where is the Buddha located?
It's located off of McGregor and I think College Parkway.
Is that in Lee County, Florida?
Yes.
How did the two of you get to the Buddha?
So I met Christine at her apartment that night and we took an Uber from her apartment to the Buddha.
About what time did you Uber over to the Buddha?
Around 10:30.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
For the record, I'm showing defense counsel was previously marked as State's Exhibit 7. I'm showing you State's Exhibit 7. Will you take a look at it and tell me if you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, this is the Buddha in Fort Myers.
And is the bar behind the big statue of the Buddha?
Yes, that's the main entrance to the bar.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move 7 into evidence.
Any objection?
None.
Be admitted.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Do you have any specific reason the two of you chose the Buddha on that night?
There was live music there that night, so we wanted to go see a band play.
When you got there, what was just sort of the general environment of the bar?
It wasn't overly crowded. There was, a decent amount of people there that night, dancing, drinking, nothing out of the ordinary from a typical bar.
Was there a band playing?
Yes.
Now, were you friendly and did you talk to other people that were there?
Yeah, we socialized quite a bit. There's a couple of different bars in the main bar, and we were down at one bar, we danced, we got drinks at other bars, we talked to the people that were there. Pretty standard going out night.
Now, obviously you're drinking and listening to music this entire time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had been drinking pretty heavily that night.
And is that why you chose to get an Uber?
Yes, yeah, we both knew we were going to be drinking, so we didn't want to be driving at all.
Now, while you were there, did someone approach you?
Yeah, towards the end of the night, as we were walking up to the upstairs bar, somebody jumped out in front of me, kind of just like to get my attention and said, "Hey, who's your friend?" And gestured towards Christine. He seemed friendly and introduced himself, and I grabbed Christine and said, "Hey, this guy wants to meet you."
What was his demeanor?
Friendly, charming.
Is there any red flags that popped up when you were talking to him?
No.
How did he introduce himself to you?
At that point, he introduced himself as JR.
Do you see JR sitting in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Would you please point to him and identify an article of clothing that he's wearing?
Right there, in a bright blue suit.
Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
Okay.
Now, has his appearance changed since the time that you met him?
Yes, he has a lot more tattoos on his face. He did not have any facial tattoos
May
the
I
night
approach
we
a
met
witness?
him.
You may.
At this time, the state showing what's been marked as State's Exhibit 39. Would you take a look at State's Exhibit number 39 and tell me if you recognize that exhibit?
Yes.
What do you recognize it to be?
JR, the person who introduced himself to us that night.
And is he the same person sitting here in court today?
Yes, ma'am.
And does this fairly and accurately represent how he looked back on October 6th of 2019?
Exactly.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move 39 into evidence.
No objection.
It'll be admitted.
Permission to publish.
You may.
Now, after you introduced him to Christine, what happened next?
Christine and I and JR and another man, Jason, who we were introduced to by JR, talked at the bar, mingled. Christine and JR seemed to be interested in each other. Me and Christine had commented on how he had dimples, and one of the guys she had been talking to earlier in the night only had one dimple, and he had two dimples. And, she definitely was attracted to him, and he seemed attracted to her, and they were friendly and getting to know each other.
Now, you mentioned that JR introduced you to someone by the name of Jason.
Yes, so there was another man that he was with at the bar named Jason, and I was under the impression that they were there together as friends, just like me and Christine had been.
At some point, did you take your talking and socializing outside of the bar?
Yeah, so that was at the end of the night, and the bar was closing. So they were kind of shuffling everybody out the door. Christine and I went outside, and we're still continuing to socialize with JR and Jason until, it was decided to leave. And me and Christine had came in an Uber, so we followed Jason and JR to their car. JR had tossed the keys over to Jason, and we were going to go after party. I didn't know at that point if we were going back to Christine's house or where we were headed from there, but we were going together.
Now, when you went into the parking lot, everybody's talking. Again, describe the mood.
Happy. Everybody was cheerful, intoxicated, but, there wasn't anything out of the ordinary or scary by any means, just typical end of the bar night.
Now, is this around 2 a.m. that the bar's closing
Yes.
and kicking everybody out?
So
Now,
everything was closing at that point.
again, as far as JR's concerned, does he exhibit any kind of anger or any kind of red flags?
No, not at all.
And in fact, you and Christine thought he was charming? Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned that JR threw the keys over to Jason. Mm-hmm. What type of car was it that you got in?
It was a Dodge Hellcat, I think it's called.
Whose car did you believe that was?
I believed it was Jason's at that point.
When you got
Or,
it,
yeah.
you believed it was Jason's car?
I don't really remember. I just know Jason was driving at that time, so my assumption was that it was his car.
Where did everybody sit in the car?
Jason sat in the front seat, Christine sat in the in the passenger seat, and then me and JR were in the back seat.
Now, where did you end up going?
We drove not very far. It was only a couple of turns, maybe less than 10 minutes in the car, but we ended up at Jason's house.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing defense counsel what has been previously marked as case exhibits number 8 and 9. I'm showing you states exhibits number 8 and 9. Will you please take a look at those exhibits and tell me if you recognize them?
This is the car that we left the Buddha in.
States exhibit number 8.
8.
Does that fairly and accurately represent the way the car appeared when you got in it that night?
Yes.
Showing you states exhibit number 9. What does states exhibit number 9 show?
This is Jason's house.
Is this the house where you went to after the bar closed?
Yes, I remember that star on the house.
Your Honor, at this time, the state will move 8 and 9 into evidence.
Any objection?
Permission to publish?
You may.
You just told the jurors this is the Hellcat that you all got in?
Yes, ma'am.
And then State's Exhibit number 9, that's Jason's house.
Yes.
When you arrived at Jason's home, was anyone else present?
Yeah, his mom was home. So when we walked in the front door, his mom was awake and on the couch and not very happy that he was bringing people home. We tried to make small talk and, kind of ease the situation, but we just ended up going to Jason's bedroom, which was down the hall from there.
Now, when you got back into Jason's bedroom, what happened with Christine and JR?
So pretty quickly after getting to Jason's house, Christine and JR started having sex.
And when they started having sex, what did you and Jason do?
Jason had a bedroom that led to the outside, so Jason and I hung out outside most of the time, only to, really go in to use the bathroom maybe. Christine and JR were inside for a while. They came outside and mingled a little bit with us and went back into the bedroom.
You mentioned that they started out having sex. Did their sexual encounters appear to be consensual?
Yes.
So there was nothing that, again, at this point, that caused any red flags?
No.
Now, when you and Jason were outside, what were the two of you doing?
We were drinking, smoking, talking. He had a trampoline out there, so we sat on the trampoline and talked for a while, just mingling, talking.
Did the two of you have any interest in each other that night beyond just talking and friendship?
No.
So did the two of you hook up at all?
No.
Now, you mentioned that JR and Christine would go inside the house and come back out and kind of go back and forth. During these back and forth interactions, were they normal types of interactions?
Yeah.
Did they appear to be having a good time?
Yeah, they appeared to be having a good time with each other and, joyful and, nothing out of the ordinary or concerning.
Now, about how long were you at Jason's house?
I would say we were probably there for a couple hours, maybe 2 hours.
After about 2 hours, did you all leave?
Yes, so we were at Jason's house and then kind of, quickly JR was saying, oh, we got to go. This guy doesn't want us here anymore. And it was kind of at that point that I realized that Jason and JR didn't know each other before this night. The way JR was, seeming at the beginning of the night was that, they were there together. And then when we were leaving, it was, it didn't seem that way. It seemed like this guy wanted us out of his house and it was kind of quickly an exit. But when we went to the driveway, we got back into the car that we came in, which Jason had drove at that time, but now JR was driving.
Okay, so when you are leaving Jason's house, was it somewhat abrupt as far as
Yeah,
you
it
all
was
leaving?
quick, but it wasn't anything like, he wasn't mad that we were still there or anything like that. It was just time to go.
And this night that you went out on the bar, it was a Sunday night?
Yes.
So you're going into now Monday morning?
No, Monday. I had to work. I believe Jason had to work the next day. His mom obviously wasn't happy that we were there to begin with, so.
So the party, everything is kind of winding down for the night?
Yes, and we go and get in the car, and JR is trying to back the car out of the driveway, and he can't get it to go in reverse. It's just revving the engine in the driveway.
Is the car a manual or a stick shift?
It's a stick shift
Is
car.
it clear to you that he was unable to drive a stick shift?
Yes.
So what happened is you're in the driveway and he's revving the engine?
So Jason actually had come outside because he heard the engine revving, and said, you guys got to leave. You can't be here anymore. You're being too loud. It's, almost the morning. At that point, JR had actually gotten the car into reverse and into the street. He was trying to get the car into drive and go forward, and same thing. He couldn't get the car to move. He's just revving the engine in the middle of the street. It was at that point that I got out of the car and said to Christine, I said, get out of the car. Let's take an Uber. Let's get in an Uber and go home.
So were you able to make contact with an Uber driver to have them come pick you up?
Yes, Christine called the Uber.
Now, once the Uber driver arrived, did you get into the Uber right away?
Yes, I got into the Uber right away. Christine and Wade Wilson were looking for his cell phone. He couldn't find his cell phone. So they started to walk back towards Jason's house to look for his cell phone. I don't know if they made contact with him. I was sitting in the Uber at that point with the Uber driver, and both him and I remember him saying, oh, they got 5 minutes or I'm leaving. And, both of us were ready to go at that point.
Now, to your knowledge, did Wade Wilson, or the person that was saying that he was JR, did he ever find his phone that night?
I don't believe so.
So when he and Christine got back in the car, where did the Uber driver take you?
The Uber took us back to Christine's apartment.
And then that's 10A, Christine's apartment.
Yes.
Now, what happened when you got back to Christine's home?
When we got back to Christine's home, the three of us went into her house, and I know Christine and I had this sense of relief that we had made it home, that we got home, safely, and, just it was winding down. I remember sitting on the couch and taking my shoes off. I remember Christine standing in the kitchen getting something to drink. And I remember telling her, I had to go home because I had to go to work the next day and take my son to school.
Now, where was your son staying that night?
He was with my mom.
And did you and your son live with your mom?
Yeah, we lived with her at the time.
Now, about what time did you leave to go home so that you could take your son to school and go to work?
About 6 o'clock.
Now, prior to leaving, did everything seem fine?
Yeah, it did. And I remember telling Christine, I have to go home. I have to go to work. And she was like, okay. She hugged me and kissed me goodbye and said, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
And again, when she told you goodbye and that she'd see you tomorrow, did you have any concerns for her safety?
No.
And in fact, if you did, would you have left her home with just her and Wade Wilson in that house?
Not at all. And if she was concerned, Christine would have never let me leave that house if she was scared. She would have said, let's get this guy out of here together.
So when you left, is it safe to say that really the night was over, the party was over?
Yeah.
It's already morning time.
Mm-hmm. And, like I said, we had this sense of relief that we had made it home. We obviously were in a car with somebody who couldn't drive a car, and I know for me that was the scariest part of that night, was the being behind the wheel of a car with somebody who couldn't drive. And I know when we got back to Christine's house in that Uber, it felt like, we were home safe.
And it seems that your concern was not driving while intoxicated because along the way you had gotten Ubers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, when you left, you said that you had to take your son to school, and you also had to go to work. Mm-hmm. What time did you go to work?
I had to work the morning shift at Duffy's that day. I think I was at work by 10:30 in the morning. My son starts school at 9, so I dropped him off and then went to work.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Christine worked at Duffy's. Did she have to work a shift that day?
She was not scheduled to work that day.
Nevertheless, did you reach out to her just to check in with her at some point?
Yeah, I had texted her in the early afternoon and just said, you up? And I did not receive a response.
All right. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing State's Exhibits, or I'm showing defense counsel what's been marked as State's Exhibit 6, 5I, and 5J. Ask you to take a look at State's Exhibit 6. Do you recognize the numbers on State's Exhibit 6?
Yeah, that's Christine's phone number.
Is that the phone number you texted her?
Yes, ma'am.
Showing you State's Exhibit 5I. What is 5I?
Christine's cell phone.
Okay, and 5J?
The back of Christine's cell phone.
And is that a poppet that's on the back of her cell phone?
Yep.
That would
the
help
pop
her to hold
socket.
it?
Yep.
And is this the phone that she carried that night and carried with her at all times?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to move 6, 5I, and 5J into evidence.
Any objection?
None.
Be admitted.
Permission to publish?
You may.
Showing State's Exhibit 6. That was Christine's cell phone number at the time.
Yes.
Is 630 like a Chicago or an Illinois area code?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an Illinois area code.
Showing you 5I. That's the front of her cell phone.
Yes.
And then 5J, that's the back of her cell phone with the pop socket.
Yes.
Now, when she didn't immediately respond to your text, were you concerned at all?
No. At that point, I was not concerned. We had had a late night. She didn't have to work. I assumed she was sleeping.
Okay. Did you later on try to get a hold of her?
So when I left work, I called her again. She didn't answer. And then I got in touch with Samantha, who is her cousin. Again, not concerned that I hadn't heard from her. I asked Sam, I said, have you talked to Christine at all today? She said no. I had told her, I was out with her last night, just kind of told her about our night and what we did, and ended the conversation. Maybe a few minutes later, I'm not sure how long, I got a call from the Cape Coral Police Department.
Now, you mentioned you talked to Samantha, who was Christine's cousin. Mm-hmm. Was Samantha also a good friend of yours?
Yeah, Samantha and I have been friends since high school as well.
And was Samantha obviously she was a cousin of Christine, but were they also very close
Yeah,
friends?
yeah, all of us have been like sisters, like best friends.
And Samantha had not gone out with you the night before?
No, Samantha was not with us.
Now, did you also try to call Christine?
Yeah, I tried to call Christine and text her that day.
When you called her, did the phone ring numerous times?
Yes.
It didn't go straight to voicemail?
I honestly, I rember it ringing and going to voicemail. I don't remember how, if it went straight to voicemail or, rang for a long time.
But either way,
I know
she
I
never-
did not talk to anybody and nobody answered.
No
She
one
did.
answered.
No.
Now, you mentioned that a Cape Coral detective called you. And what was the purpose of that detective's call to you that you thought at the time?
So at that time when they called, they were asking me if,
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor,
Sustained.
may I give a?
Yes.
It's not for the truth of the matter asserted, but for the effect on the listener.
Still hearsay and still.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you back to the jury room for a few minutes.
All rise.
the jury is exited the courtroom. You can be seated.
Judge, I think it would be helpful if I just proffered a couple questions so that I could make my argument as to
Okay.
how this is not going to be hearsay.
All right.
All right, so you received a call from a detective, and what was the basis, or what was that conversation?
The police were asking me if I knew where Christine was or why her car would have been found in Fort Myers.
So based on these questions, what did it cause you to do?
It caused me to start being concerned about what happened to Christine after I left.
Okay, and then so based on your concern about what happened, what did you do?
Myself, Samantha, our other best friend, and Samantha's husband all went to Christine's apartment.
And when you got to Christine's apartment, what did you see there?
When we got there, the caution tape was already up.
So, Your Honor, the reason for asking the detective is not to prove that her car was stolen, but to prove that at that point, based on our conversation, the action she took and the steps she took, which were to talk to her cousin Samantha, to then actually go over to that home. So based on that, the state would argue that's an exception to the hearsay rule, and it should be admissible.
My objection is it's hearsay, and the relevance, there's no relevance. I mean, she can just say, based on what the officers told me, I went over to the house without relaying what the officers told me.
Judge, if you're saying what the officers told me, that's again, it's still an exception to hearsay. What the officer told her is not used for the truth of the matter asserted. So therefore, it is non-hearsay, because the exception is the information that he told her was used by her to then go to the house and to further try to find out where her friend Christine was. So what the officer told her, we're not using that for the truth. So therefore, it's not hearsay.
But the other objection was to relevance of the effect on her.
Sure. The relevance is that at this point, she realizes that she should be concerned, that her friend is missing, and that she goes over there. So it's highly relevant as to how this day took place and how she gets over to her missing friend's home and what she does. That's all completely relevant to this case and to the charges that we have before this court.
All right.
Well,
Go ahead.
sorry, while it may be interesting, it's not relevant to anything in this case.
Okay. All right. I'm going to sustain the objection. You can ask her about getting a call from the detective. I think you could go as far as having an objection to her asking, the detective is asking questions about Miss Melton.
Correct.
And then what did you do next?
If it's just based on what the detective said, ask you, what did you do?
All right, so I'll ask her, did the detective call you, and based on what he told you, did you become concerned and then go to Christine's home?
Any objection to that?
No.
Okay. Let's bring the jury back in. Yes?
The gentleman's chair that I pulled out, I noticed he had two books, and I asked him when he went back, I said, what's that other book? He said, it's my personal. And I said, I have to bring that to the attention of the judge. He said he didn't write anything in it, but
Okay. So, I guess one.
It's an official notebook as long as that
As
notebook's
long as it
being turned
stays
in.
here, he can't take it back. He can't take it back to the jury room with him.
okay.
Any objection to that?
No.
Okay. And I can even just instruct them that I prefer they use the notepads that the court provided. And if they, anything else, leave it out of the courtroom and just use the notepads in the courtroom and leave those in the
For
courtroom.
now, it stays in the courtroom. Or
Yeah, he said he hasn't written anything in it.
may I hand it to you?
You have it?
Yes, right there.
No, just leave it. It's fine. Where is it? In his chair? Okay, no, I don't, what we'll do is, all right, yeah, let me take a look. Okay, it's blank, there's nothing in it. So
And
that's his personal one, there's nothing in here, doesn't appear to be anything written in it. It's just got his juror summons. So just ask him to leave this back in the jury room and only use the note and pad that the court has provided.
Bring it back with me now.
Yes.
Just so the record's clear, the bailiff handed the notebook that the juror brought with him to court. The court has reviewed it. There's no writing on the inside. You've given it back to the bailiff.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then you can bring everybody else out. And I'll instruct all the jurors if they've brought their own personal notebooks or anything, just to leave those back in the jury room and only use the ones provided by the court.
Please, thank you.
Jurors entering.
All right. Please be seated. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I know some of you may have brought your own notepads or what have you with you. I would just ask you, leave any of those personal things in the jury room, and when you're in the courtroom, just use the notepads that the court has provided. That way they can stay in here during any proceedings, okay? Ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All
Thank you. Going back to, I believe we were talking about a detective making contact with you. Once you had a conversation with the detective, did you become concerned?
Yes.
What did you do?
When I received the call from the Cape Coral detective, myself, Samantha, and her husband and her other cousin all went to Christine's apartment.
What did you see when you arrived at Christine's apartment?
When we got there, the police were already there, and they had already put caution tape up around her house.
Did you know any information at that point about where Christine was?
No, we went from Christine's house to her mom's house, which was right around the corner from Christine's apartment. And we waited there until the detective came there and informed us that they found.
Sustain.
At some point, did you learn that Christine had passed?
Yes,
And what happened once you learned that Christine had passed?
it was devastating.
Did you stay at her mother's home?
No, I went straight from her mother's home to the Cape Coral Police Department and gave a statement.
Now, when you went to Christine's home and you found yellow crime scene tape around her property, did you see her car sitting in the driveway?
No, and in fact, it was pouring rain, and I remember all the detectives and police officers standing under her carport and seeing that her car was not there.
Now, when you and Christine had gone out to the Buddha bar the night before, was her car in that carport?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing defense counsel by D.
I'm sorry, what?
D.
D.
As in David. approaching you and showing you State's Exhibit 5D. Do you recognize what's in that exhibit?
Yes, those are Christine's name tags from her Duffy's uniform.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would move 5D into evidence.
Any objection?
None.
Be admitted.
Permission to publish?
You may.
You were just talking about Christine's car not being in the carport when you went to her home. Showing you Exhibit 5, was that Christine's car at the time of her death?
Yes.
Also showing you 5A. Is
Yes.
that the back of her car?
Yes.
And it's a Versa.
Yes, a Nissan Versa.
I'm showing you 5D. Are those name tags that she would wear to work when she waited tables at Duffy's?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned giving a statement to law enforcement. Did you detail everything to them about the night before and the events that took place at the Buddha all the way until you were contacted about her death?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, did Christine have any tattoos on her leg?
Yeah, she had a tattoo on her calf of a Gemini symbol with some tribal music notes on the side of it.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing State's Exhibits 10E and 13.
E and
13. May I approach?
you may.
I'm going to ask that you take a look first at 10E. Do you recognize this?
Yes, that's
And what does it
Christine.
show?
That's the tattoo on Christine's leg.
And then I'm also going to have you look quickly at 13. Do you recognize that?
Yes, that's Christine.
And is that after she had passed?
Yes.
And a permission. First of all, the state would move 10E and 13 into evidence.
They'll be admitted.
Permission to publish.
You may.
Judge, I would ask that 13 be passed around to the jurors rather than display that one.
Okay.
Then I'm showing 10E. Is that the tattoo on her calf?
Yes.
When you went and gave your statement to Cape Coral, did they show you 6 different photographs of a suspect in this case?
Yes.
May I approach?
You may.
For the record, I'm showing the Defense Counsel what's been marked as State's Composite Exhibit 41. Approaching you and showing you State's Exhibit 41. If you would just take a look at this exhibit and tell me if you recognize it.
Yeah, that's my signature there. And these are the photos that they showed me, the lineup photos.
Now, did a detective show you the series of photographs?
Yes, he showed me all those photographs.
And there's a series of 6 photographs, is that correct?
Yes.
And did the detective in any way give you any idea of who you should pick or who you should identify?
No.
Did you have a fair amount of time to be able to look and see if you could ID anybody?
Yes.
And did you in fact ID someone?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And how were you able to tell who you ID'd?
By my signature.
And then did you also
And then
put
the date, yes.
And 10/7/19, that's the day that you learned that Christine was no longer with us?
Yes.
And did you identify photo number 4 as a person that had introduced himself to you as JR?
Yes.
At this time, the state would move 41 into evidence.
Any objection?
Objection, can we approach?
Yes.
Number 4.
Okay.
Who is picture number 4?
JR.
And you see JR sitting here in court today.
Yes, he's sitting
Please
right
wait.
over there.
Okay, so the person sitting right over there is in a sort of a royal blue
He is wearing
jacket.
a royal blue jacket and a yellow tie.
And is that person the person that you knew as JR?
Yes.
And is that the same person that's in photograph number 4?
Yes, that is the same person in photograph number 4, JR.
And at this time, the state would move 41 into evidence.
No objection.
Be admitted.
We have a moment.
You may.
At this time, the state has no further questions and tenders the witness.
All right. You may. Is that, and you've got the disc and everything else? It's
Ms. Johnson, Jason, did you know him? Do you know his last name?
I do not.
Did you ever see him again after that date?
No.
come a point in time back at Miss Milton's residence that Mr. Wilson used, he couldn't find his cell phone, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so he used Miss Milton's phone with her permission.
no,
No what?
I don't remember that happening.
He used the phone, right?
Not that I saw.
And you were there for what, 2 hours?
At Christine's house?
Yes.
No.
How long were you at,
Christine's house?
yes?
When we returned in the Uber, I was only at Christine's house for maybe 15 minutes.
Okay. Oh, I'm
Not
sorry.
long.
It was 2 hours at Jason's house.
At Jason's house, yes, sir.
Okay. Did you and Mr. Wilson and Jason and Miss Milton use cocaine or other drugs that evening?
Yes.
What drugs specifically?
I saw Christine, Jason, and Wilson using cocaine. Everybody was drinking and smoking marijuana as well.
Okay, did you use cocaine?
I did not.
Yeah, moment, Judge.
You may.
Nothing further, Judge.
All right.
Brief, Your Honor.
Okay.
Just want to ask you briefly about the cocaine use. How much cocaine did you see being used that night?
Very little. I would say maybe a couple of lines each.
And was that an amount we consider like a party amount?
Yeah, it was not a large amount.
So based on that cocaine use, was anybody out of control?
No.
So would you say that, again, people are buzz friendly?
Yeah, intoxicated, but everybody was, having a good time and nothing concerning.
Thank you. I have nothing further. I'd ask that she be excused.
All right. Go ahead.
Ma'am, briefly,
Okay.
who supplied the cocaine?
I'm not sure.
And where was it used?
At
Smell?
Jason's house.
Jason's house.
Yes.
And obviously, once you left, you don't know if Ms. Milton and Mr. Wilson continued using cocaine
I do not.
or used anything else.
I do not.
Thank you.
Yes, I think this is your portion, and
It is.
does your client wish to address anything in this hearing?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Wilson nodded his head no. Judge, this is a letter from the adoptive parents of Mr. Wilson. It's been 5 years since the worst of this began. You can't possibly understand how sorry we are for the families affected by this tragedy. We cannot change the past, but we wish we could. On that fateful day 5 years ago, not only were the lives and the dreams of 2 women lost, with their families left behind in shock and grief, but another family was left shocked and grieved over a different kind of loss. It's easy to recognize the victims and their families and to feel profound sympathy for all they suffered and lost. But one group that isn't often recognized as those also suffering is the family of the accused. Our journey of loss didn't happen all in one day as theirs did, but it was heartbreaking nonetheless. Wade was a joyful child, loved his parents and sisters, and was loved immensely in return. But over the teen years, and then especially in the early years of adulthood, Wade began to slip away from us, becoming withdrawn, erratic, and depressed at first. Then, as addiction was added to mental illness, he became frankly paranoid and delusional, and the sense of loss became increasingly sharp. He was in the system for years trying to get help for his mental anguish and for his addiction. They put a tiny Band-Aid on it and then sent him back into the world without a diagnosis, medication, and without follow-up care. We tried to hold the pieces together, but had no idea how to find the support Wade needed to be the person he was inside. The system failed him, and that fateful day in 2019, we lost the last piece of the son we loved and all the hopes for his future. In those tragic moments, when the cancer of severe mental illness and addiction won, we lost our son, grandson, brother, nephew, and uncle. So we understand the despair, anguish, loss, and hatred for someone or something that takes away someone you love. Because despite everything, Wade is still our son, and we love him. The hopes and dreams of his life are already lost, but the human is still in there somewhere, tortured beyond what most of us can even begin to imagine. Taking his life will not bring back those two beautiful women. There is no justice on earth for that kind of loss. Taking another life only adds to the tragedy. Please see it in your heart not to kill our son and make our innocent family suffer even more. The system designed to help those who suffer and are lost failed him. That system is broken and would be only further broken if it took Wade's last breath. That broken system owes Christine, and it owes Diane, and it owes their families, and it owes our family. It owes us all the peace that it did not provide to Wade. Candy and Steve Wilson.
Thank you.
We would rest.
All right.
Judge, I would just ask that you colloquy the defendant to ensure that he doesn't want to speak at this hearing.
Oh, well, Mr. Wilson, you have an opportunity, just like during any of the other phases of, well, let me just finish real quick. Any other phases during the case, if you want to address the court, I would permit you to do that. Obviously, everything's recorded, but you would have that opportunity if you wish. No one can prevent you from addressing the court if you wish to, and no one can make you address the court if you don't want to. So it is a decision that's solely left up to you if you want to address the court or not.
Not today.
Thank
Later, when I come back, I will. Today,
Okay.
no, I won't.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
The state calls Dr. Thomas Coyne.
All right, sir, raise your right hand. You swear affirm testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You can take the stand.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
May.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Please state your name for the record.
Sure. Thomas Coyne, C-O-Y-N-E.
Dr. Coyne, did you testify in the guilt phase of this trial regarding the autopsies that you conducted?
I did, yes.
What is your educational background?
Sure. I completed my undergraduate degree at Rutgers University, followed by medical school at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School, which is also at Rutgers University. At that same time, I completed a PhD in toxicology. After medical school, I completed a residency in general pathology or anatomic pathology at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. At that same time, I also completed a fellowship or subspecialty training in neuropathology. And last, I completed a subspecialty training in forensic pathology at the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner Department. And so right now, I'm currently board certified in anatomic pathology, neuropathology, and forensic pathology.
Since we're here discussing the brain, specifically the defendant's brain in this case, would you describe what is neuropathology?
Specifically, it is the study of brain disease in all forms. And so we assess the brain from all ages, from fetal stages through old age. And we look for both normal features as well as all different types of features of disease, ultimately to find out if there was any pathology that may explain why a person died.
Now, when you were a part of this neuropathology program, could you just explain what the practical part of that program entailed?
Sure. There's several different practical components. One area is working directly with surgeons as well as neurologists in a hospital in diagnosing disease in patients who are living. And so we would review a person's Most often, they're biopsies with a comprehensive medical team looking at a person's, presentation, as well as their clinical findings, radiological findings, and then add in our pathological findings. From a medical examiner perspective, we look at the actual brain in deceased persons. And so my job is to look at the brain to see if there is any underlying disease or injury that may explain why that person died.
Now, how long have you worked as a medical examiner?
Since 2014.
And as part of your duties as a medical examiner, do you conduct autopsies on a regular basis?
I do, yes.
Approximately how many autopsies have you conducted?
Close to 4,000 now.
Now, as part of your autopsies that you perform, are you equipped to examine the brain and determine whether the brain shows any signs of atrophy or any kind of injury?
Yes, specifically my neuropathology training allows me to do that.
And in every autopsy, do you examine the brain?
I do, yes. I examine both brains at autopsy, and I also receive brains from offices and other universities throughout the country to examine brain for disease.
And do you testify, or have you testified as an expert specifically just for the brain?
Yes.
And can you just describe that?
I couldn't tell you exactly how many times. I've probably, in my career, testified over 50, but less than 100, and been deposed a number of times as well. In all instances, I'm generally called upon to testify as both a forensic pathologist as well as a neuropathologist, and at times as a toxicologist. But I have been called on probably greater than 25 times specifically just to testify as a neuropathologist.
City of Fort Myers.
Just over 15 years.
Back in October of 2019, were you a police officer at that time?
Yes, I was.
And how long had you been working as a police officer at that time?
Just under 13 years, I believe.
And what were you doing, what were your duties and roles as the police officer back in 2019?
At that time, I was a senior patrol officer, and I was on alpha shift and assigned to patrol.
What's a senior patrol officer do, sir?
Basically, we respond to calls for service, assist the public in any way, shape, or form, and protect and serve the city of Fort Myers.
When you say alpha shift, what do you mean?
That's the assigned shift. Shifts are broken into 12-hour periods, and I was on the alpha shift from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Now, specifically directing your attention to the 7th of October of 2019, were you working on that day?
Yes, I was.
Did you have occasion to become involved in an investigation involving a battery that occurred at a spa known as Mila's Spa, involving a young lady by the name of Melissa Montanez?
Yes, I did.
And what was the extent of your involvement in that particular case?
I was called to the scene of a reported battery on West First Street in front of the Mila Spa. Upon arrival with other officers, we made contact with the victim.
And was the investigation ultimately turned over to an officer to conduct that?
That's correct.
Okay. And what did you do in response to turning that investigation over to that officer?
I turned the investigation over to the officer, and I patrolled the area to see if the identified subject would possibly still be in the area.
And were you able to locate him?
Not at the initial time, no.
At what time were you able to locate him?
I was contacted by an acquaintance and said that...
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you receive information with regards to the whereabouts of a individual who later became known to you as Mr. Wade Wilson?
Yes, I did.
And when you received that information, what did you do in response?
I responded to the area and looked for the described vehicle and the person that I had identified as Wade Wilson by his driver's license photo and the photo in the LCSO records.
And when you say you went to a specific location, which location was that?
It was Joe's Crab Shack on West First Street.
And when you made contact with that individual at Joe's Crab Shack, Were you also wearing a body cam?
Yes, I was.
What exactly is a body cam?
A body-worn camera is a camera that all police officers issue, and the standard policy at Fort Myers Police Department, as most police departments, is that as soon as you as soon as you get the call, you activate your body camera. Also in our cars, we have an automatic system where if you turn on the overhead lights, it automatically starts your body camera.
And were you wearing a body camera on that particular date and time?
Yes, I was.
Judge, let the record reflect on the defense counsel previously marked in State's Exhibit 34 and 35.
Is it 34 and 35?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach?
You may.
McCormick, I'm showing you some previously marked in State's Exhibit 34. I ask you to take a look at that item. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what does that appear to be?
That appears to be the parking lot of Joe's Crab Shack.
Okay. Does that photograph fairly and accurately depict the parking lot there at Joe's Crab Shack?
Yes, it does.
And I'm also handing you what's previously marked in State's Exhibit 35. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
How do you recognize that?
This is the recording of my body cam.
Okay. And does that body cam fairly and accurately depict your interaction with Mr. Wilson on the 7th of October of 2019?
Yes, by my initials, it does. You showed it to me in your office, and I initialed it.
Okay. And it's essentially the same or similar conditions when you last saw it?
Yes.
Judge, the state will move State's Exhibit number 34 and 35 into evidence at this time.
Objection. Be admitted.
Permission to publish, Judge?
You may.
So we're looking here at State's Exhibit number 34. That is, in fact, the parking lot there of Joe's Crab Shack.
That is.
Where in relationship to Mila's Spa is Joe's Crab Shack?
If you're sitting in the parking lot of Joe's Crab Shack as it's depicted, and your car was backed into a spot, say next to the white car right there, if you look to your left across the street is where Mila's Spa would be.
Now, when you made contact with Mr. Wilson, could you please describe what his demeanor was like?
He was, he seemed nervous, and when I spoke to him, he seemed a little defensive and uncooperative.
Did you know anything he was wearing at the time?
He was shirtless, and I remember he was wearing a pair of pants that seemed to didn't fit him at the time.
And do you see the person that you made contact with there at Joe's Crab Shack in the courtroom here today?
Yes, I do.
Would you please point him out and describe an article of clothing that he's wearing?
He's sitting to my right, and he's wearing a suit with a black tie.
Judge, you'll have the record reflect the witnesses identify the defendant as well.
Okay.
Permission to publish the video, Judge?
You may.
I'm saying. So I'm going to have you step out of the car, and I'm going to detain you. Not arrest. Detain you right now. Okay? And I can't have any problems. You understand me? All right. What's that? Like 5, I'm at Joe's Crab Shack in the parking lot. I will. I give you my word. No. I have to detain you. By our procedures, I have to detain you. Because of the battery this morning. There wasn't any battery? I will. No. Just relax. Let me see the keys to the car. Let me see the keys to the car. Keys. Keys. Wait, we're not going to have any problems. Just give me the keys to the car. Wait. Just wait till my partner gets here. L41, gonna need a couple more units. Don't go anywhere. Hey. Don't do it. He's in his car. He's attempting to take off. Back up. Yes, please. He's taking off, Fort Myers. Just ran a stop sign going up towards McGregor.
Now, Mr. McCormick, when you made contact with Mr. Wilson, did he appear to understand everything that you were telling him?
Yes.
And was he responding in kind to you?
He was basically denying everything that I was asking him to do.
When you're having a conversation with him, you were giving him certain commands and you were asking questions of him. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And was he responding appropriately? By appropriately, I mean if one asks you if you had breakfast this morning and one would respond, yes, I had cereal, that would be an example of appropriate response. Was he responding to you appropriately?
Not complying to my commands, but yes, he was responding appropriately.
And when you told him specifically about a battery that occurred that morning, what was his response to you?
That there was no battery.
Okay. And he continued to deny that.
That's correct.
And when you advised him that you were going to detain him, he opted to leave the scene as an alternative choice to what you were telling him. Is that right?
Ultimately, yes, that was the outcome.
Is there anything else in that video that we were not able to understand that you recall specifically that Mr. Wilson had told you?
Not that I recall.
Did you follow, or did you continue to follow him?
I did for a short period of time.
Okay. Why did you stop?
Because of the time of day and the amount of traffic on the road. It was around lunchtime. It's somewhere there near lunchtime, and the amount of people on the road. At the time, I only had a non-pursuitable offense.
What does that mean?
I only had misdemeanor battery at the time,
Yes, sir.
so therefore there was no probable cause to continue any type of pursuit or have any other officers try to locate him at the time because of the nature of the offense we were dealing with.
And would that have been the protocol of your office?
Yes, that is.
Okay, fair enough.
Life and safety of the community comes first.
Thank you. No further questions for this witness, Judge.
Any questions?
No cross.
All right. You can step down.
Thank you, sir.
Judge, can we approach?
Okay.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury by telling them your name?
Sure, how you doing? I am Dr. Thomas Coyne, C-O-Y-N-E.
Dr. Coyne, what do you do for a living?
I am a medical examiner. I am the current chief medical examiner in District 2, Tallahassee.
I'd like to direct your attention to October of 2019.
Sure.
Where were you working at that time?
I was the deputy chief medical examiner here at District 21.
Would you please describe your training and educational background for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that allows you to do the work that it is that you do?
Sure. Started out first with medical school. I completed my MD at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School or Rutgers University. At that same time, I also completed a PhD in toxicology and pharmacology. I then went on for a general residency in pathology or anatomic pathology at the Hospital University of Pennsylvania. At that same time, I completed a fellowship training or subspecialty training in neuropathology. After that, I went to the Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office for training in forensic pathology. So right now, I'm board certified in anatomic pathology, neuropathology, and forensic pathology.
All right. It's a lot of pathologies. Would you please describe for us what pathology is?
Sure, it's a branch of medicine, as internal medicine and sort of general medicine. Pathologists work behind the scenes. We have the same training as other physicians, but our job really is to determine or identify disease in tissues or in a deceased person. And we use our knowledge as a physician as well as other tools such as the autopsy procedure. We use our microscope to do histology to look at the tissues themselves, and other tests like microbiology testing or genetic testing. And together we put all that information together with other physicians, hopefully to either identify your disease if you were in a hospital, or in my case as a forensic pathologist, to determine cause and manner of death.
You just anticipated my next question. What exactly is forensic pathology?
Sure. Forensic pathology takes all the tools that you learn as a pathologist, and we also study how injuries occur, so mechanisms of injury, how force creates injury, whether it's a blunt force or a sharp type force. We also learn about gunshot injuries, environmental injuries like fire and chemical injury. We have training in toxicology. We learn about the process of decomposition, and we use all of that again to figure out how a person dies.
Brings me to my next question. Anatomical pathology is what?
That's just general pathology.
And when we're talking about neuropathology, what are we referring to?
That's specifically pathology of the brain.
How long would you say that you've been a doctor?
11 years now. Well, since 2009, a doctor, but training as a forensic pathologist for 11 years. They go by so fast.
How many years have you been in medical examiner?
11 years.
All right. So in that time, can you tell us approximately how many autopsies that you've gone ahead and performed?
Ooh, it's approaching 4,000 now.
Now, back in October of 2019, you indicated that you were the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner here in Lee County. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, at that time, did you have an opportunity to perform an autopsy of Miss Diana Ruiz?
I did.
In general, could you please describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the purpose of conducting an autopsy?
Sure. An autopsy, ultimately, it's to determine the cause and manner of death. But an autopsy is a procedure in which I examine a deceased person initially, much like I would a person who walks into an office, to see your physician. You start with examining the person externally, making note of normal body features, their body habitus, and then begin working to see if there are any unusual features like congenital defects or injuries. You catalog everything you see externally, and then you work internally, examining all the internal body cavities to, again, look for normal features as well as any signs of disease or injury. You add to that any microscopy or histology, looking at their tissues under the microscope. You sample their bodily fluids or tissues to do toxicology testing. And then you take all that data together and you hopefully arrive at a cause and manner of death.
Would you please describe for the ladies and gentlemen the difference between cause and manner of death?
Sure. Cause of death is what actually led you to die on that particular day. So, for instance, let's say if you had heart disease and you had a heart attack. Well, physicians, we call that a myocardial infarction. So our cause of death would be myocardial infarction due to coronary artery disease, and that's your cause of death. And in that case, your manner of death would be natural. Whereas, let's say if you died in a car accident and you had head trauma, and perhaps maybe your cause of death is traumatic brain injury due to a motor vehicle accident, then your manner of death would be accident. In Florida, we have 5 manners of death. There's natural, accident, suicide, homicide, and then lastly, undetermined.
All right. Now, let me draw your attention then to the autopsy of Ms. Diana Ruiz. Did you perform that on the 11th of October of 2019?
Yes.
Would you please describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how you began the autopsy of Ms. Diana Ruiz?
Sure. The body was transported to our office under homicide protocol. So it was in a body bag that was sealed with a lock. So the first thing we did was unseal that lock, open the body bag, and begin examining the body in its natural state, that is wearing clothing, sort of slowly documenting the clothing the person was wearing, removing the clothing from that person, placing that aside for additional photography, and then moving in towards examining the body.
What injuries did you note, if any, on the external examination of Ms. Diana Ruiz?
Sure. Most notably, so she was in the stages of putrefactive decomposition. So her tissues were being decomposed and degrading. She had some evidence of animal or scavenging activity on her body as well. And so portions of her ears and nose were removed already, most likely by avian scavengers. But I could see externally, first and foremost, that she had fracturing of the nasal bone. She also had a laceration underneath her left breast. She also had bruising or hemorrhaging in the skin on both sides of the left and right sides of the body.
Was that the extent of the external injuries that you observed? On
the most significant external. There was, of course, a lot of significant internal injuries.
And did you document all of these by way of
photograph? I apologize. She also had, what I didn't talk about, was bruising on the back of her left forearm, bruising on the back of her left hand. I can also see that she had a fracture of the fourth finger, the proximal part of the fourth finger. And she also had some bruising on her right arm as well.
After you noted these external injuries, did you ultimately document those particular injuries
Yes.
by way of a photograph?
I did, yeah.
Now, before we get into the internal examination, did you also document the internal examination by and through photography as
Yes.
well? So, if I may approach defense counsel, Judge.
You may.
I'm showing them what the previously marked cases number 30, 30A, 30B, 30C, 30E, 30G, and 30H.
You may.
Judge, can we approach?
You can. Actually, it might be a good time to just take a quick break. I'll send you all back to the jury room.
Mr. Luckage, when you had made that 911 call, you indicated that you went to a property behind the Mateos graphic, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Where did you go after you made that 911 call?
I stayed at 160 Hunter Boulevard until the officers called me back over to 2309 Hancock because they could not find him in the building. So I walked through the building with them to kind of show them some nooks and crannies that he could have been. And from there on throughout the day into the later hours, I was at Hancock with the officers.
And Mr. Wilson was nowhere to be found, is that correct?
No.
Did you know where he went?
No.
Okay. Do you see Mr. Wilson here in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Would you please point him out and describe an article of clothing that he's wearing?
He's right there in the blue jacket.
Judge, let the record reflect Mr. Luckage is identified Mr. Wilson.
Okay.
And did everything you testified to occur here in Lee County, sir?
Yes.
Thank you, Judge. I have no further questions at this time.
Mr. Luckage, we saw the video. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. We saw the video of him getting out of a car. He went in through a door. Is that the entrance to your business?
To that building business, yeah.
Or are there multiple entrances?
There's multiple entrances, yeah.
You described him as, let me ask you something. How well did you know Mr. Wilson?
I didn't know him very well. He was an employee at a friend of mine, marina in Conch Key, and
Down in the Keys?
Down in the Keys, and I've only met him maybe a handful of times before that.
Let me ask you, if you were acquaintances, why would he go to you to get money for a ticket or a plane?
I have no idea.
You said that there were just the two of you. Wasn't there a third employee in the building?
No.
You said he was frantic. Could you describe that more?
He was pacing around.
Kind of manic?
Getting back and forth close to my person and needing a ticket. Any kind of ticket, bus ticket, money, or anything. And I told him I couldn't help him.
Okay. And Did he lash out at you when you said you couldn't help him?
No.
You said he was talking crazy. What did you mean?
Crazy as far as, no, you don't understand, Josh, I killed people last night.
Did he say he stabbed those people?
I don't recall.
Did he ever work for you?
No.
During the 911 call, there was no mention of him being covered in blood. Did you leave that out?
I don't remember.
But the 911 call would be the best.
To refer.
Right.
Sure.
Okay. May I have a moment, Judge?
You may.
Goes with either of those videos?
I wouldn't. I don't know if the audio is with it. No.
This is your video system, security system, right?
Right.
You don't know if it records sound?
No, I don't.
How long have you been in that location?
That video system was actually taken from a tenant's video system, wanted dead or alive, on my property.
I'm sorry, explain that again?
The tenant
Yeah.
from the building that we were renting to, it was wanted dead or alive. It was in the 911 call.
All right. That was the towing company.
Right.
All right. Did Mr. Wilson live at your condominium?
No, he did not live there.
Did he visit there?
He has maybe been there once or twice before that.
And what, he stayed maybe a week or 2 weeks or?
Not at my property, no.
Nothing further, Judge.
All right. Can you redirect?
Briefly, Judge.
Mr. Lukich, when you described Mr. Wilson talking crazy, was that because of what he was telling you or how he was telling it to you?
It's pretty crazy what he was telling me.
Thank you. No further questions, Judge.
Okay.
No,
All right.
no recross.
You may step down, sir.
We're going to ask that he be excused.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury by telling them your name?
I'm Scott Hannon, the fiance of Diana Ruiz.
Mr. Hannon, I'd like to direct your attention back to the 7th of October of 2019. What were you doing that day?
I was working.
When did you leave for work?
I usually leave at 6:30 in the morning.
And I'm assuming you left from your residence at the time?
Yes.
Who did you reside with?
With Diane, her son, and her daughter.
And where did Ms. Ruiz work?
She worked at the Moose Lodge.
And where were you working that day?
I was working as a dock worker, carpenter at the time, and sorry, I'm a little nervous. So, yeah, I was working as a dock worker.
And you indicated that Ms. Ruiz worked at the Moose Lodge?
Yes.
And how did she get to the Moose Lodge on most days?
Most days, she had our friend who was an Uber driver. His name is James, anyway. But I guess on that day he was not available.
Do you know how she got to work that day?
Yes, I know that she walked to work.
Do you know what Ms. Ruiz typically would wear to work?
Usually a moose shirt, blue jeans, and her black tennis shoes.
When you left for work that morning, was Ms. Ruiz still at the residence?
Yes, she was still in bed.
And you left for work around 6:30 in the morning, you said?
Yes.
So you didn't see her after you'd left, is that correct?
Nope.
Did you have any contact with her after you left for work that day?
A brief text message. She didn't think I gave her a kiss goodbye.
Had you?
Of course.
Direct your attention to the screen. Case exhibit number 25, is that Ms. Ruiz?
Yes.
Did Ms. Ruiz also carry with her a purse when she went to work?
Yes, she always had a purse.
May I approach the witness, Judge?
You may.
Sir, I'm going to show you some previously been marked, state exhibit number 23 and 24A. You recognize that?
Yeah, that's a new purse that she had just got.
And what's 24A?
All of her belongings in her purse.
And do states exhibit number 23 and 24A actually depict the new purse that she just gotten, and as well as the items that were contained therein?
I recognize everything.
And Judge, the state would move states exhibit number 23 and 24A into evidence at this time.
Objections?
No objection.
Be admitted.
Commissioner Public Judge?
You may.
Now, Mr. Hannon, you indicated that this was a relatively newer purse?
Yes.
Okay. When had she gotten it?
Maybe a week before.
Did she carry a different color type of purse before she'd gotten this one?
I don't remember exactly what color it was, but she had a different purse like almost every month.
So then we have states 24 that contained her the wallet,
Yes, that's her wallet.
and then 24A. That's the wallet as well as the vape and whatever else was inside. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Did Ms. Ruiz have any identifying marks on her body?
The only mark that I remember is the tattoo on her back.
Showing you 330D up on the screen. Is that the tattoo?
Yes, that is.
Did Ms. Ruiz also carry a cell phone on her person?
Yes.
Could you
It was
describe
a
that for us?
ZTE cell phone.
ZTE phone?
Mhm.
Okay. What was her favorite color?
Pink. Pink or purple.
I'll show you what's been previously admitted as state exhibit 4G, or 5G, excuse me. Recognize that?
Yep.
What are we looking at in that photo?
That is her cell phone.
Then 5H?
Yep, that's the back of it.
Also going to show you State's Exhibit number 26. You recognize that?
Yes, I do. That's her phone number.
And lastly, sir, I'm going to also show you, do you recognize this particular item, State's 30I, that was previously admitted into evidence?
That's the ring I got her.
Okay. And what did that ring signify?
Our love for each other.
Now, in relation to the distance between your residence and the Moose Lodge, how far would you say that was from your residence?
About a 10-15 minute walk.
Was she known to do a 10 or 15 minute walk to work on
Occasionally.
occasion?
Yes.
Could you tell us, after the last text that you received from Ms. Ruiz on the 7th of October, did you hear anything further from anyone else as to your wife's whereabouts?
Not until around noon, when I actually get to my phone, because I keep it in the truck as I'm working. Lunchtime, I got to my phone and noticed that everybody was trying to get a hold of me.
What did you do in response to everyone trying to get a hold of you?
I immediately called one of the people that was trying to get a hold of me, and they told me the situation. Luckily, my boss was on job at the time, and I told him there's a situation, I need to go.
And did you?
We left immediately.
Okay, where'd you go?
Right to my house.
What happened when you got to your house?
I met with Brandon there, and he told me the situation, and I don't remember exactly what we did after that, but I remember a police officer coming to the house talking to us about her purse.
And did you ultimately retain the purse there at the residence?
I believe it was there when I got there. I'm not absolutely sure because it was 5 years ago. But there was a Detective Jones who came there and, had me identify the purse.
After Detective Jones had you identify the purse, what did you do next?
We actually sat around our kitchen table and he asked me a bunch of questions. And then I guess as soon as we're done, he left and said thank you.
So in essence, you gave a statement to law enforcement.
Yes.
I have nothing further for this witness, Judge, at this time, except for the fact that the state would move a certified copy of phone records, State's Exhibit number 14 into evidence, 27 into evidence at this time.
I'm sorry, what were the number of exhibits?
27, Judge.
Okay. Any objection?
No, Judge.
All right, they'll be admitted.
Thank you, Judge. I have no further questions for this witness, Judge.
All right.
How far was the Moose Lodge from the house?
Maybe 2.5 blocks.
And I assume Ms. Ruiz would have left through the front door?
Yes, through our front door, yes.
Okay. And what direction would she have gone?
I believe that would be easterly direction.
When you come down the path to the street, you go right or left?
Well, we lived on the corner, so it's a right or left and immediate right.
Left or immediate right, okay. And how long would it take to walk it?
About 10 minutes.
Did Ms. Ruiz wear different shoes to walk to work or back versus her work shoes?
Nope, she wore the same shoes.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right. Anything else?
No questions from the state judge. We respectfully request that he be excused.
All right. Any objection? All right, sir. You may step down and you're excused.